So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we're going over the GCSE Maths Pass paper of June 2024 on the higher tier paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now before we get started working through the paper, a little reminder that I'll include a question breakdown in the description below so you can see which question refers to which topic. So if there is a question that you feel a bit challenging, you can see what topic it relates to, and I'll also include a link to the 162 Maths contents page, which gives you easy access to all the lessons that go over the topics in detail, along with topic tests, audits and other exam paper walkthroughs. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 says the diagram shows a circle with centre O and 3 straight lines. Use one word to describe each shaded region. Choose from arc, chord, sector, segment and tangent. So for region A, that's going to be a segment. And for region B, because the two lines go from the centre to the circumference, that's going to be a sector. And you get 1 mark for each correct of those. Moving on to question 2, it says the mass of an iceberg is 2.2 million kilograms. The value is a 12% reduction from the original mass of the iceberg. Work out the original mass of the iceberg. Give your answer in standard form. So for this, if we have the original mass, to get a 12% reduction, we need to look at the decimal multiplier. So you always start with 100%, you're taking away 12%, and that leaves us with 88%. Now that as a decimal multiplier is 0.88, so I'm going to multiply that by 0.88, and it tells me in the question that that equals 2.2 million kilograms. So this is what I'm wanting to work out. I'm wanting to work out what the original mass is. So to work out the original mass, what I need to do is divide 2.2 million by 0.88, and if I type that all into my calculator, which I'm going to do right now, and just make sure that you're including the right number of zeros, in which we should get an answer of 2.5 million kilograms. Now the question does ask us to give our answer in standard form, so all that's left for me to then do is to convert this in standard form. So that's going to be 2.5 multiplied by 10 to the power of 6. Moving on to question 3, it says that a chef has a tub of blueberries. She wants to use all the blueberries, put the same number of blueberries on each dessert, and we've got a formula of D equals K over B. D is the number of desserts, B is the number of blueberries in each dessert, and question 3a is asking us, what does the constant K represent? Tick the correct box. So for us to work out the total number of desserts, and little b is the number of blueberries in a particular dessert, then K must be the total number of blueberries in a tub. So it's the first box that we need to tick. Then for questions 3b, it says complete the table. Well, to complete this table, what this is relating to is relating to direct proportion, or inverse direct proportion in this particular case. So for this, what we need to do is use this formula that we've got right at the top of the screen. So we're using this formula here. So if I just move along here and just write down the formula, so D equals K over B. Now what I need to do first is I need to find the value of K first. So find K first. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute this value of B and this value of D into the formula. So what I end up with is 120 equals K over 2, and therefore K equals 240. So what we've got is we've got a formula of D equals 240 divided by B. So if B is 6, this is going to be 240 divided by 6, which is going to give me an answer of 40. Then for the last value, what we need to do for this one is to do 30 equals 240 divided by B. So that's going to be 240 divided by 30, which equals 8. So this value here is going to be 8. So looking at question 4a, it says a fair spinner has 6 equal sections, each with the numbers 5, 6, 7 or 8. Each number appears at least once. The probability of getting an even number is equal to the probability of getting a 7. Work out the probability of getting a 5. You may use the blank spinner to help you. So for this, what we need to do is fill in this spinner. So we know that we've definitely got one of each number. So 5, 6, 7, 8. We know that the number of 7s must equal the number of even numbers. So if I've got 2, at the minimum I've got 2 even numbers, so I must have at least another 7. And therefore I must have another 5 because I can't have another even number. So my spinner must be this. Then looking at the spinner I've done, you don't have to have the numbers in that particular order. To be fair, you don't even need to complete the spinner. It just says you may use the blank spinner to help you. But here what we've got is we've got 2 sections out of 6, in which that simplifies to be a third. Moving on to question 4b, it says a different spinner has 10 sections, each labelled A, B, C or D. And the question is asking us to give one reason why there must be a mistake in the table. Now for this, if we add up the probabilities, we get 0.1, 0.5. We can see straight away that in order for this to be true, all of these probabilities must add up to 1, in which they don't. So the reason why the mistake is made is because the probabilities add up to, and it's going to be 1.1, not 1. So in other words, the probabilities are wrong. Something along those lines, you may reword your answer to what I've written there, but that will be absolutely fine for the 1 single mark. Moving on to question 5a, it says here is a sketch of the graph y equals minus 2x plus 6, and the question is asking us to work out the coordinates of C and D. Well, let's see. What we've got is x equals 0. So if I substitute x equals 0 into y equals minus 2x plus 6, then what I end up with is y equals 6. So the y ordinate of C is going to be 6, and at D, y equals 0. So if I sub y equals 0, I get y equals minus 2x plus 6. So I've got 0 equals minus 2x plus 6. So 2x equals positive 6. So therefore x equals 3. So it's got a x ordinate of 3. It then says for question 5b, here is a sketch of a quadratic graph. It says complete the following statements. The value of the y-intercept is 5. And the x ordinate of the turning point is, now for the turning point, it's always going to be the midpoint of the two x intercepts. So here I've got minus 2 and I've got 8. So I'm looking for which number appears in the middle. Well, there's a difference of 10 between the numbers. So the distance between here and here is going to be 5, and the distance there is going to be 5, which gives me an x ordinate of 3. Then moving on to question 6, it says work out 2.5 times 10 to the power of 4 to the power of minus 3. Give your answer in standard form. So for this, all I need to do is just simply type this into my calculator. So if I get my calculator and just simply type this in exactly how it's shown, so I can 2.5. Now you can either use your standard form button or you can use times 10, whichever you prefer. I'm going to go for standard form button, and then to the power of negative 3, type that into my calculator, and I get 6.4 times 10 to the power of 14. So I'm just going to write 6.4 times 10 to the power of 14. And for 1 single mark, it's just a straightforward stick it in your calculator question. Question 7, it says Archie flips a biased coin 200 times. Here is some information about the outcomes after each 50 flips. It says work out the best estimate for the probability of flipping a head. Give your reason for your answer. Well, the answer that you want to write is going to be 52 over 200, which I can simplify to be 26 over 100, which again simplifies to be 13 over 50. So any of those. And the reason for that is because the more flips or trials, the more accurate the probability. And with these relative frequencies, you always want to go for the one that's going to be more reliable, will always be the one that has the most trials. Moving on to question 8, it says the line is sprinting in a straight line towards from its den. The graph shows the line's distance from the den, and the question is asking us to work out the speed of the line in meters per second. So for this, what we need to do is, first of all, recognize that speed is equal to distance divided by time. So for this, what I need to do is I need to work out the distance travelled. And by looking at this, it's going to be that point there is 30 and it's going all the way up to 120. So the distance travelled is going to be 120 minus 30, which is 90 meters. And the total time is 5 seconds. So then working out and using these numbers, I can then work out the speed in meters per second. So just check that your distance is in meters and your time's in seconds. So the speed is going to be 90 divided by 5. And if I work that out, I get an answer of 18 meters per second. Moving on to question 9, it says on the Venn diagram, shade the section represented by P and Q. So P and Q is going to be this middle section. Like so. Question 10, it says a bus route has 90,000 passengers last year. The number of passengers was predicted to increase by 3% this year and then 8% next year. Is this predicted number of passengers for next year more than 100,000? You must show you're working. Well, if we start with 90,000 and we're doing a 3% increase, so again, remember we always start with 100%, add 3%, so that's going to be 103%, which as a decimal is 1.03. And then we're going to do another 8% increase, so that's going to be 108%, and that as a decimal is 1.08. So if I multiply that by that, and then all I've then got to do is type that all into my calculator, in which I get an answer of 100,116. So is the predicted number of passengers more than 100,000? The answer is yes. And you can just write, if you've got time, 100,116 is greater than 100,000. Moving on to question 11, it says that a map has a scale of 1 to 20,000. Two churches are 15 centimetres apart. Work out the actual distance between them. Give your answer in kilometres. So for this, because the scale is 1 to 20,000, then if I've then got, let me just write that down. So that means that 1 centimetre is going to be 20,000 centimetres. So if I've got 15 centimetres, that's going to be, I need to then times that by 15. So 20,000 multiplied by 15 gives me an answer of 300,000 centimetres. Now what I now need to do is convert that into kilometres. So if I divide that by 100, then that's going to equal 3,000 metres. And if I divide that by 1,000, that's going to equal 3 kilometres. And there is my answer. Moving on to question 12, it says circle the reason why these triangles are congruent. So for this, we can see we've got a side the same, we've got another side the same, and we've got another side the same. So that's going to be an SSS. So we just need to circle our last option. Moving on to question 30, it says Liam takes part in long jump competitions. Here is some of the information about 40 of his jumps, and the question is asking us to work out the estimate of the mean distance of these 40 jumps. So first things first, what we need to do is work out the midpoint between the boundaries. Now to work out the midpoint, you just add the lower bound and the upper bound together and divide by 2. So that's going to be 7.2. This is going to be 7.6, and this is going to be 8.0. Then to find the fx value, what I need to do is multiply the frequency by the midpoint and typing that all into my calculator. I get 108 for the first one, 18 times 7.6, which is 136.8, and then finally 7 times 8, which is 56. And then I then need to do my total fx, which is the total sum of the fx column. So 108 plus 136.8 plus 56 gives me a total of 300.8. Then the estimated mean is going to be 308, or 0.8 shall I say, divided by 40, and working out on the calculator I get an answer of 7.52 meters. And just to double check, is that seem correct? Well, yes, because the middle interval is the one that was the most common, so you would expect your answer to be within that group. Now moving on to question 14, it says the graph passes through the points 3, 15 and 7w. Assume that the equation of the graph has the form of y equals x squared plus c. Work out the value of w that this would give. So for this, what we need to do is, first of all, we need to find out what the equation of the curve is, and we need to find out what c is. So to find c, we sub x equals 3 and y equals 15. So doing that, we get 15 equals 3 squared plus c. So 15 equals 9 plus c. So c equals 6. So what the equation is going to look like is y equals x squared plus 6. Now from this equation, we can then work out what w is going to be. So we can then substitute x equals 7, y equals w into the equation. We end up with w equals 7 squared plus 6. So w is going to equal 49 plus 6. So w equals 55. Moving on to B, it says, in fact, that the graph is a straight line. What does this mean about the actual value of w? Well, if it's a straight line, we don't really know any other information. We don't know what the gradient is. All we know it's a straight line, so it's going to be on the lines of y equals mx plus c. So it's going to be absolutely impossible to tell what impact that's going to have on the value of w. Even though we know the x-ordinate, because we don't know the gradient and we don't know what the y-intercept is, it's going to be impossible to know. Moving on to question 15, it says concrete from a truck is poured at 10.9 kilograms per second for 30 minutes. 1,000 kilograms is equal to 1 ton. Is more than 20 tons of concrete poured? Tick a box and when you say yes or no. Now again, one of my biggest bugbears about this is they should have the yes no at the end, not at the front, because you'd be sort of tempted to tick a box and then show you're working. So always leave that ticking of the box last. Do your working out, answer the question, figure it out, and then tick your box. So for this, what we need to do is we need to work out how many seconds there are in 30 minutes. So to do that, all we need to do is just do 60 times 30, which is going to give us 1,800 seconds. And then we then multiply that number by 10.9 kilograms. And typing that into my calculator, 1,800 multiplied by 10.9, and that equals 19620 kilograms. Then if we divide that by 1,000, we get 19.62 tons. And the question, is it more than 20 tons? The answer is no, as 19.62 is less than 20. Moving on to question 16, it says here is some information about the length in centimeters of leaves, and the question is asking us to draw a box plot to show this information. Well, to draw a box plot, what we need is we need to know the shortest distance, which I know. I need to know the longest length. Let me just get rid of that mistake there. We need to know the longest length, we need to know the median, we need to know the upper quartile, but the information that I don't know is the lower quartile. Now the lower quartile can be worked out by doing the upper quartile minus the interquartile range. The upper quartile is 7, the interquartile range is 3, so that means that the lower quartile is going to equal 4. So all that's left for me to then do is to enter those 5 bits of information into the axes. Now again, you need to be relatively neat with this. I'm not going to use a ruler because it'll take me forever to do that on this, but hopefully you will be a little bit more sort of neater. So we've got 2.4, every little box represents 0.2, and we've got a lower quartile of 4, we've got a median of 6, an upper quartile of 7, and a higher value of 9. Like so. And then all I need to do is just complete the box like so, and then just join a line. Again, do use a ruler and a pencil to make sure that's nice and neat. Moving on to question 17, it says AB is a straight line. Both angles are given in degrees. Work out the value of x and then work out the ratio of the smaller angle to the bigger angle. Well, from this, what we should know is that angles on a straight line add up to 180. So a quarter x plus 15 plus 2/3 x minus 44 equals 180. So what I need to do is I need to find out x. So if we combine the two fractions together, so a half plus 2/3, and again, encourage you using your calculator for this. So if I just get the calculator up, we've got, and I use the fraction button, so I've got a quarter plus 2/3, and that gives me a total of 11 over 12. So that's going to be 11. Let's try not writing a highlighter. 11 over 12x. 15 minus 44 is going to give me minus 29 equals 180. And then just solving this, we get 11 over 12x equals 209. And then taking 11 over 20 over to the other side by dividing by 11 over 20. Alternately, you could divide it by, multiply by 12 times by 11. It's entirely up to you, whichever floats your boat. But if I do 209 divided by 11 over 12, I get an answer of 228. And then from this, what I can then do is work out the smallest angle by substituting 208. So that's going to be 228 divided by 4 plus 15, which equals, and again just typing that into the calculator, gives me a smaller angle of 72 degrees. And then if I work out the larger angle, that's going to be 2/3 times 228 minus 44. So 2/3 multiplied by 228 minus 44 gives me an angle size of 108 degrees. And then all we then need to do is just write that as a ratio. So from this, what we've then got is the ratio of small to large is 72 to 108, which we can then simplify, which gives me 2/3. And there we go. Moving on to question 18, it says that a diagonal of a rectangle is 23.7 centimeters long. The diagonal makes an angle of 52 degrees with the side length x. Work out the value of x. Well, if we start by drawing a rectangle, like so, and we've got the diagonal of the rectangle, which is this line here, and we know that that's 23.7 centimeters. Now it says that the diagonal makes an angle of 52 degrees with the side labeled x. So let's call this side here x, and this angle is 52 degrees. And what the question is asking us to do is to find the value of x. And I'm hoping by drawing this diagram, you can see it's going to involve trig. So the first thing we need to do with this is to label our triangle. So we've got hypotenuse, we've got the adjacent, and we've got theta. So choosing the right trig ratio, which uses a and h, which is going to be cos. So I've got cos 52 equals x over 23.7. So x equals 23.7 multiplied by cos 52. So x equals, I'm going to type that in, 23.7 multiplied by cos 52. I get an answer of 14.59117,697, which I'll round up to 14.6, and that's centimeters, and that's to 1 decimal place. Now again, just be careful with your rounding. If your rounding's not great, just copy the answer on your calculator, as there's no mention of what they want x to be rounded to. Moving on to question 19a, it says show that, and we've got this expression, simplifies to be an integer. So first things first, you can see brackets. So I would assume that most units would expand the bracket. So here we've got 4x times 3x, which is 12x squared. And then 4x times 2 is plus 8x. Then multiplying this out, what we end up with is minus 12x and squared minus, now when you've got a fraction and a big number, we just multiply the top. So that's going to be 10x squared over x. And then I multiply 6, and let's just use a different colour. We've got minus, and that's going to be a plus there. Again, because a minus and a minus becomes a plus. Then we've got minus 6x times 3, which is minus 18x. And then we're going to end up with minus 42x over x. Now, from this, what we then need to do is cancel things down. So this x cancels with that x. This x cancels with this. So rewriting this, I get 12x squared plus 8x minus 12x squared plus 10x minus 18x minus 42. Now writing this, what we then can see that this 12x cancels with this 12x, and we've got plus 8 plus 10 equals 18x minus 18x equals 0. So all we're left with is minus 42, which is our integer. Moving on to 19b, it says factorize 8x squared minus 18x minus 35 equals this. Now, for 2 marks, if you can do it just by looking at by inspection, you'll get 1 mark for each correct bracket. If you can't, then don't worry, I'll show you how we can actually do this. So first things first, what we need to do is we multiply our coefficient of x squared by the constant. So that's 8 times 35, which is going to give me a big number. 8 times 35 gives me 280. Now what I'm looking for are 2 numbers that multiply together to give me, actually that should be minus. So it's minus 280, but added together give me an answer of minus 18. Now from this, what I can see is that our 2 numbers in question are going to equal, is going to be 28 and 10. So it's going to be minus 28 and positive 10. So looking at this, we've got 8x squared minus 28x plus 10x minus 35. Then if I factorize the pairs, I can take out a 4. So I've got 4x, in which I've got 2x minus, and that's going to be 7, and plus I could take a 5 out, and that's going to be x minus 7, 2x minus 7 rather. And so from this, one bracket is going to be 4x plus 5, and the other bracket is going to be 2x minus 7. And like I said, you'll get 1 mark for each of those correct brackets. Now for question 20, it says x minus 9 equals 2 lots of 6 minus x squared, all divided by x plus 3, and x is what it equals. And it says work out one possible set of values for d, e and f. Now one thing you should spot, it's not quite obvious in this, is the fact that this resembles the quadratic formula. Now if that resembles the quadratic formula, what we need to do is try and create a quadratic formula using this. So if I just write this out again, we've got x minus 9 in brackets equals 2 lots of 6 minus x squared and over x plus 3. And I'm just going to stick the x plus 3 in brackets. So if we take the x plus 3 over to the other side, then what we end up with is x minus 9, x plus 3 equals, and we've got 2 lots of 6 minus x squared. Now expanding the brackets, what we end up with is x squared minus 6x minus 27 equals 12 minus 2x squared. Then to make this into a quadratic, we make it equal to 0. Now to try and get a positive x squared, I'm going to take the right hand side over to the other side. So we're going to add 3x, so that's going to be 4, no, it's going to be 3. So we've got 3x squared minus 6x, and then we take away 12, which is going to give me minus 39 equals 0. Now to make life a little bit easier, one thing I do notice is that all of those coefficients are divisible by 3, so that's going to be x squared minus 2x minus, and that's going to give me 13 equals 0. So taking this and using the quadratic formula, we've got a equals 1, b equals minus 2, and c equals minus 13. Now I just need to be careful with those minuses. So what I've got is I've got minus minus 2 plus minus, and it's going to be minus 2 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a, which is 2. Then simplifying this, what we get is 2 minuses become a plus, so that's going to be 2 plus minus, minus 2 squared is 4. 4 times 1 times minus 13 is going to give me minus 52, so that's minus minus 52 over 2, which equals 2 plus minus, and that's going to give me 56 over 2. And now that we've got it in the format that they wanted us to, we can state that D equals 2, E equals 56, and F equals 2 as a possible solution. Other possible solutions would be if you, let's say, multiplied each of those values by a certain factor for it to still give you the same value. So for example, we could multiply everything by 2, in which we'd get different values of D, E and F, etc. But the simplified integers are going to be 2, 56 and 2. Moving on to question 21, it says people in a stadium are in the north stand, the east stand, the south stand and the west stand. Of the people in the stadium, a quarter are in the north stand, 3/10 are in the east stand, and the number in the south stand to the number in the west stand is in the ratio of 2 to 7. There are 4,480 people in the west stand. How many people are in the stadium? So for this, what we need to do first is to see what fraction we are working with the rest. So if I do a quarter plus 3/10, then that's going to equal, I can just type this straight into my calculator, no need to get a common denominator. I type that in and I get a fraction of 11 over 20. So the fraction, therefore, that's going to be in the south stand. So the south stand and the west stand is going to be 9 over 20. Now, if I treat this as parts, then what I've then got is I can then work out the fraction. So because I notice that my fraction here is 9 and these two numbers here add up to 9. So combining these two things here together, what I get is a south stand equals 2/20 and the west stand is going to equal 7 over 20. And then from this, what I've then got are my fractions. Now from this, it tells me that 4,480 equals 7/20. So if I do 4,480 divided by 7, that's going to equal what 1/20 is. So 4,480 divided by 7 equals 640, and that is what 1/20 equals. So to work this out, well, I know that the north stand is a quarter, and if I turn that to a denominator over 20, that's going to be 5/20, so that's going to be 5 times 640. The east stand is 3/10, which is 6/20, which is going to be 6 times 640. Then the south stand is 2/20, so that's going to be 2 lots of 640, and the west stand I know is 4480. So all I then need to do is work out these three amounts, and let me just move the screen slightly so we've got a bit more space. So on the calculator, if I do 5 times 640, I get an answer of 3,200. 6 times 640 gives me 3840, and 2 times 640 gives me 1280. So to work out the total capacity of the stadium, I've just got to add up these four numbers. So the total is going to be 3200 plus 3840 plus 1280 plus 4480, and type that in. And we get a total of 12,800, and there is my final answer for that one. Then moving on to question 22, it says use x1 to work out the approximate solution to x equals 5 minus 1 over x, and we've got this iteration here. And it says give your answer to 4 significant figures. So with these iterative questions, what we need to do first is use our calculator. Now it is important that even though this is going to be very calculator based, that you do write down the first couple of values that you are getting on your calculator before getting the solution. So how we do this particular question on the calc, let me just zoom out so we can see it all, and let me just center it up. So if I get the calculator back, which is here, enter the first number, which in this case is 1. And then what I'm going to do is enter this formula but replace xn with ands. So I've got 5, let me just make sure I've done that correctly. So 1 equals, and then we're going to do 5 minus, and then open the fraction 1 over ands, press equals. So my x1 value is 1, my x2 value is 4. Then if I press equals, I get my second value, which is 4.75. I get my x4 value by pressing equals again, which is a long decimal number. So we're going to go for 4.789. So 4.789, and then blah, blah, blah. Then once I've written down a first couple of numbers, if I then press equals, what I'm looking for is when the calculator number stops changing. And that there is my solution. So if I just copy that number down, so the answer is equal to 4.79128787. Now the question does say give your answer to 4 significant figures. So 4 significant figures is going to be 4.791, and that's to 4SF. And there we go. Moving on to question 23, it says prove DEF is a straight line. Now to prove it's a straight line, what we need to do is here is show that DE is a factor stroke multiple of EF. So first things what I need to do is I need to work out what DE is. So D to E is going to be 6a plus b, and then I'm going with the arrow, so that's plus 2a minus 5b, and collecting the like terms, that's going to equal 8a minus 4b, and that's what D to E equals. So let me just highlight that. Then I need to work out what E to F is. So E to F, I'm going to go against the arrow, so that's going to be minus 2a plus 5b, and then going with the arrow, so I'm adding 4a minus 6b, and then collecting the like terms, I get 2a, and that's going to be minus b, and that's what EF equals. So again, let's just highlight that. So what I then need to show is what do I need to do to multiply this to get to this? Well, as 4 lots of EF equals DE, then DEF is on a straight line. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine for the 4 marks. Moving on to question 24, it says a room is kept at a constant temperature of 21 degrees Celsius for 6 hours. The heating is then turned off and the room begins to cool. Here is a sketch graph showing the temperature of y degrees Celsius of the room at time x hours. And it says for 24a, assume that the equation of the curved part is y equals k over x, where k is a constant, and the question is asking us to work out the value of y when x equals 12. So for this, what we need to do is we need to find the value of k first. Now to find the value of k, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this point here, in which when x equals 6, y equals 21. So if I type in 21 equals k over 6, then k is going to equal 6 times 21, which gives me a value of 126. So that means that the equation of the curve, if I substitute that into there, is y equals 126 divided by x. So to find out when x equals 12, y is going to equal 126 divided by 12, and type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 10.5, and that is in degrees Celsius. Moving on to 24b, it says, in fact, the equation of the curve, if the curved part is y equals a plus 1/3 to the power of 1/6 x, where a is a different constant. How does this affect the value of y when x equals 12? Tick one box from below. Now, for this particular question, if I go back to the graph, we've got that coordinate of 6, 21. So when x equals 6, y equals 21. So let me just quickly write that here. X equals 6, y equals 21. And if we substitute that into this equation, what do we get? Well, we get y, oh no we don't, we get 21 equals a times 1/3 of 1/6 times 6. So here we get 21 equals a times, now, well, 6 times 6 is just 1, so that's just going to be 1/3. And then we take the third over, so a equals 21 divided by 1/3, which gives me a value of 63. So a equals 63. So then if I want to work out the formula, that's going to be y equals 63 times 1/3 to the power of a 6th x. Now then, if I substitute x equals 12 into this, we get y equals 63 multiplied by 1/3 to the power of a 6th times 12. Now 12, this bit here is going to equal 2. So y equals 63 times 1/3 squared. Now if I type that into my calculator, 63 multiplied bracket 1/3 to the power of 2, I get an answer of 7. So comparing 7 to the y value I got in part A, which is 10.5, it's going to be less. So we need to tick the middle box. Moving on to question 25, which is our last question. It says, here is a right-angled triangular prism. The ratio of the edges is A to B to C to D is in the ratio of 3 to 4 to 5 to 12. The volume of the prism is 1,125 cubic centimeters. Work out the total length of all the edges of the prism. So first things first, what we need to do is, if we draw like a mini prism, which is actually going to be similar to that shape, which is a really key word for this particular question, that A is 3 parts, B is 4 parts, 5 is C, and D is 12. Now if I work out the volume of this particular shape, then what we find out is that the volume of this is going to be the cross-sectional area, which is 3 times 4, and as it's a triangle we divide that by 2, and we multiply that by the length. So 3 times 4 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. 6 times 12 is going to give me an answer of 72 cubic centimeters. Now from this, what we then know is that the volume scale factor of this big shape, the volume is 1125, and the volume of the small shape is 72. So to find the volume scale factor, which is k cubed, is going to be equal to 1125 over 72. And if I type that into my calculator, 1125 divided by 72 gives me a k value of 15.625. So k cubed is equal to 15.625. So therefore k is going to equal the cube root of that, which is 2.5. So that is what the scale difference is. So what I then need to do is then multiply each of these measurements here by 2.5. So from this we get A equals 3 times 2.5, B equals 4 times 2.5, C equals 5 times 2.5, and D equals 12 times 2.5. And if I type that all into my calculator, I'll get my respective values of A, B and C. So that's going to be 7.5, that's going to be 10, that's going to be 12.5, and 12 times 2.5 gives me an answer of 30. Now from the diagram, all that's left for me to do, the question does specify that I need to know the total length of all the edges of the prism. So even though I know what A, B, C and D are, I've now got to plug that into this diagram to work out how much of each of those letters I've got. So in this, what I've got is if I count the A's, I've got 2 of those, that's 2A. I've got B's, I've got 1, 2 of those. In terms of C, I've got 1, 2 of those. In terms of D, I've got 1, 2 and 3 of those. So from this, and just double make sure that I've not missed out any of those edges. No, I think I've got them all. So looking at those edges, 2A is going to be 2 times 7.5. 2B is going to be 2 times 10, 2C is going to be 2 times 12.5, and 3D is going to be 3 times 10. So this then becomes 15, this becomes 20, this becomes 25, and this becomes 30. And sorry, that should be 90. And then adding all of those numbers up, we get 15 plus 20 plus 25 plus 90 comes up to a total answer of 150 centimeters, and there is my final answer. Now it's really important that when you're doing this question that you do set your work out correctly. As you can see, I've got lots of circles, lots of things that potentially could be my answer, so always make sure that you are writing your answer in the correct space so it's easy for the examiner marker to know what it is you're doing.